do want to bring in another point of view. Hannah Weisfeld is the director of Yachad, a British Jewish organisation that exists to build support in the Anglo-Jewish community for political resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Hannah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I was hearing from Tamer his point of view, and we're particularly talking about the use of the word jihad. We've gone through how it's been interpreted in the law in this country, effectively or ineffectively. Your point of view in terms of the response to the chants of jihad when these protests took place at the weekend?
I think the thing we have to be really careful about is that we don't respond to this in a way which is going to make people double down and create more divisions. And so there is a lot of fear in the Jewish community right now about whether the streets of London are safe, whether Jewish communities are safe, whether you can walk into a synagogue and be safe from the threat of violent extremism. I think the reality is that culturally, the way that word is understood by a lot of people in relation to discussing a terror attack is about further terrorism. And so I think you can't divorce the legal and the religious interpretation from the way in which it will be interpreted more broadly in society. That said, I think it's really crucial that we inject moderation into this conversation, because there's a great danger that we end up in a situation where the perception is that if anyone who goes on the street in support of Palestinians waving a Palestinian flag is somehow themselves supporting violent extremism or terrorism. And I think we have to really be able to separate those who are calling for that from a person who goes out on the street to say, I'm concerned about what I see happening on the ground.
Absolutely. Do you think, as a society at this moment in time, and it's been very rapid, of course, just over 2 weeks, as you know, the Israel-Gaza conflict has come to the fore again. Do you think we're getting better just generally as we learn more and hear more about cutting through the noise and having those conversations with more nuance, perhaps with more moderation?
I have to say that my view is we're actually getting worse at that. That this conflict, and I've been running this organisation now for over a decade, and we've been through various iterations of wars between Israel and Gaza. This is obviously on a level that is completely different from anything we've seen before in the last 10 years. But I have never seen such extreme conversation and such extreme discussion. And the level of polarisation, I think, is really worrying in terms of what's happening in the UK. You know, and we're obviously not on the ground there, and the space is becoming very entrenched and very squeezed. And I think it's really crucial that the voices that are cutting through are elevated and heard.
Hannah, it's that thought, isn't it, that Tamer was saying, that ultimately people want there to be peace. People want everyone to be able to live in peace and feel safe. And it's about how this moves forward. And you actually, your organisation, you know, is looking for a political, or helping people look to a political resolution, which seems just so distant.
Yeah, I mean, it feels almost laughable to say the word peace in the current climate. The thing that I would say that I think is really crucially important is that we're now all very focused, understandably, on immediate needs, what's happening on the ground right now, what's going to happen tomorrow. I think that there has got to be some thinking about what happens in the medium to long term now, because the thing that we have all learned from this horrendous last 2 weeks is that the way in which the international community has dealt with this conflict for the last 30 years is to basically turn a blind eye and say, well, you know, occasionally it flares up and the violence is bad, and then it goes back to the status quo. And the status quo has created this terrible, terrible situation on the ground now. And I think that what's really important is that the day after this fighting ends, whenever that will be, we cannot go back to October the 6th, which was a terrible situation where Palestinians were stateless, did not have their rights. There was an ongoing occupation. Israelis feel really unsafe within their own borders. And we need to be able to move forward from that place. And we cannot go back to what we had, you know, the situation we were in the day before this latest round of violence broke out.
Hannah Weisfeld, director of Yachad, a British Jewish organisation which exists to build support in the Anglo-Jewish community for a political resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you very much for your time.